You know what's strange? We can't stop talking about boomers and millennials. We study Gen Z like there's some new species we're all trying to figure out. But there's a whole generation sitting in the middle that almost nobody mentions. Generation X. Born somewhere between 1965 and 1980. They're the coworker who never complains, the parent who seems a little distant even when they love you, the people who built half the internet and never post a single thing about their own life. And here's the part nobody tells you. Their psychology might be the most misunderstood of any generation alive today. They were the first generation of latchkey kids on a massive scale. It's 1979, you're 8. You come home to an empty house because both your parents are working. No phone to check in with. No way for anyone to know if you're okay. You let yourself in, make a snack, do your homework, and wait. By the mid-80s, something like 7 million kids that age were doing this exact thing every single afternoon. 7 million kids learning the same lesson at the same time. Nobody's coming. You handle it yourself. So their brains adjusted. When nobody's around to catch you if something goes wrong, your mind starts doing the catching in advance, scanning ahead, expecting the worst before it happens. Not because anyone taught them to think that way, because nobody was there to think for them. On top of that, a lot of these kids grew up practicing for a nuclear bomb. Duck under the desk, like plywood could stop something like that. Teachers said it calmly, like it was just another item on the schedule. When the adults around you act like the world could end on a random Tuesday, but also tell you not to worry about it. You learn to hold two things at once. You learn to make jokes about serious stuff before it gets the chance to hurt you first. And then the adults kept saying one thing and doing another. Marriage was supposed to last forever. Divorce rates shot up. Hard work was supposed to pay off. Then a company cut you loose the second it was cheaper without you. So somewhere along the way, promises stopped meaning much to this generation. Not because they're bitter, because they did the math, and it didn't add up. If you know someone who braces for bad news even when things are fine, that's why. They're not negative people. They're running on experience. Think of the coworker who's been there 15 years and never mentions a promotion, never mentions a bad day. It's easy to assume they just don't care. It's the opposite. They cared enough once that it cost them. So now they keep it close. This is also why you won't catch them oversharing online, and it's got nothing to do with technology. Half of them built the internet. It's that they grew up when privacy was just normal. Mess up as a teenager back then, maybe a dozen people ever knew. No screenshot following you around for a decade. So putting your whole life online doesn't feel freeing to them. It feels like leaving your front door open in a neighborhood you already know isn't as safe as it looks. Here's the part that might hit close to home. Underneath all that independence is a real resistance to asking for help. Not because they don't need it, because somewhere in that empty house they learned that needing something and actually getting it were two different things. So a lot of them just stopped counting on the second part. Research on adult development backs this up. Gen the 10th reaches out for support far less than other generations, at the exact moments they need it most. If that sounds familiar, if you've ever struggled quietly because asking felt like losing, that instinct kept a scared kid safe once. It doesn't have to run the whole show now. You see it in small things too. A bike chain slips and instead of calling someone, they flip it over and fix it themselves, hands covered in grease before they've even thought about asking for help. Nobody taught them that on purpose. They built it one broken thing at a time, because there usually wasn't anyone else around to do it for them. And if you wanted an answer to something back then, you didn't ask a phone. You went to a library and dug through index cards until you found the right book. That took real effort. And things that take effort tend to stick with you in a way a 5-second search never does. So when someone from this generation tells you something with total confidence, it's usually not a guess. It's something they went and earned. That's also why they don't respect a title. They respect proof. Earn your spot, and they'll follow you anywhere. Hand them a boss who talks big and knows nothing, and they'll nod, smile, and quietly ignore him. They watch too many people in charge get it badly wrong to hand out trust for free again. Here's the twist most people miss. That same generation raised their kids the opposite way. More attention, more check-ins, more presents than they ever got. They gave their kids everything that empty house never gave them. But some of them quietly worry they overdid it. That trying to fix the silence they grew up in. They raised kids who need to be watched and reassured a little too much to function without it. Because to Gen the 10th, being visible never felt safe. It felt like being exposed. Think of the most self-sufficient person you know. The one who never complains, never asks, just handles it. Now ask what that cost them to become that way. Gen the 10th isn't forgotten because nothing happened to them. It's the opposite. So much happened so early that they learned to carry it without making a sound. They're the bridge generation, standing between the world before everyone was reachable every second and the world after. And bridges don't get much attention. They just hold the weight, quietly, so everyone else gets where they're going. If you just pictured someone you love, or worse, pictured yourself, that's not an accident. That's what happens when a whole generation learns the same lesson alone 30 years ago, in a house that was a little too quiet. If this hit home, stick around. There's more where this came from.